Welcome back. So I've been using the Steam Deck for a while now, and it's really changed the way that I think of gaming. I usually just played a few games on the Switch. Like, it was nice, you know, I had the flexibility of either playing with the dock or playing handheld. And the games are great. Like Pokemon Diamond, I think, is one of the earliest games I remember playing, and the remake has been a ton of fun. So I considered getting a console like an Xbox or PS5, or even building a PC so that I had a little bit more flexibility with what I could play. But with either of those options, I was gonna lose out on my favorite part of the Switch, which was the portability. So when I saw the Steam Deck, it kind of seemed like the best of both worlds. It had access to Steam or anything else I installed on it, since it's pretty much just a computer, and I could take it anywhere I wanted. There have been a couple of issues, like this is actually my second Steam Deck, and I'll get to that. But overall, it's done a pretty good job of doing both of those things that I wanted. This is the base model with 64 gigabytes of eMMC storage. I ended up going with this since I already had an SD card that I can use to expand it up to 512 gig. At some point, I might upgrade to an internal SSD, but this works just fine for now. I haven't had any trouble with the loading times or anything. And powering this is an AMD APU with a quad-core Zen 2 CPU, 8 RDNA 2 compute units, and 16 gigs of RAM. And that hasn't felt like not enough. You know, like the Steam Deck feels like it can play anything that I've wanted to so far at a reasonable frame rate. Also, I like the overall design. It is pretty big, especially when you put it next to the Switch, but it's comfortable to hold, and all the controls are really close to where your hands just naturally fall when you're holding it. Speaking of which, on top of the standard controller stuff, you have 4 assignable grip buttons on the back, 2 trackpads by your thumbs, and a 6-axis IMU for gyro control. None of which I use very often. Like, the trackpads are nice to occasionally select stuff instead of mousing over to it with the joysticks, but I've never used the gyro control, and I don't think I've ever even considered mapping the grip buttons to anything, since I don't know what I would need it for. I'm sure I will at some point, but I haven't gotten to a game where I've wanted to do that yet. And on the front, there's a 7-inch touchscreen LCD that hits about 400 nits of brightness. I wouldn't say you can comfortably play this sitting out in the sun, but in most situations, it's been great for me. And like I mentioned earlier, you can dock this into a TV and play it like any other console. I really like having the flexibility of being able to go from sitting down and playing at a big screen to taking the Steam Deck and playing on the go. Or if you want to have a combination of those, you can actually pair the Steam Deck with the Nreal Air glasses to get the equivalent of a 200-inch screen on the go. I think these are super interesting, and they've been really fun to, you know, mess around with. I'm considering doing a full video about them, and if you're interested in seeing that, be sure to subscribe down below. Overall, the hardware here is really impressive. Like, there's a lot packed into such a small footprint, but what I think might be even cooler is the software. So the Steam Deck runs SteamOS, which is a custom version of Linux that's fully optimized for a handheld with a touchscreen. But you also have the option of exiting out into just a standard Linux desktop, and if you really want to, you could even install Windows. I did see that SteamOS 3 will support dual booting these two, which could be interesting, and I think I might hold off on my SSD install for when that comes out so I can give it a try. Valve's also built up the Proton compatibility layer, so you could just play Windows games from Steam without having to wait for an official Linux version. And when you combine the hardware with purpose-built software, you get a really good experience. Like, yes, there have been some issues, but there have been like super consistent software updates to fix and add new features, like increasing battery life, improving performance, and adding more games to the Steam library that are like verified to work on the Steam Deck. Now, I like to just pick a few games and cycle through them until I've either finished them or I get bored and move on to something else. So I've mainly just been playing Spider-Man, Stray, Portal, and Hi-Fi Rush. And all of these run great and everything feels really smooth at 60 FPS. Like, there haven't been any points where I felt like there wasn't enough power to drive these games, but I have had a few instances, especially playing Stray, where I felt like there wasn't enough power to drive like all the little details like in the cat hairs. I mean, granted, this is a mobile device, there's only so much that it can do. Also, when you start doing pretty much anything, the fan does turn on, and the Steam Deck does get pretty warm. But it's nowhere near where you're holding it. It's right in like the center area where the compute is, so you're fine and you don't really feel the warmth when you're playing. Now for battery life, I get anywhere from 2 to 4 hours in between charges, but it really depends on what games you're playing and how demanding they are and like what settings you have set up. As you limit the performance, you will get more playtime. You just need to pick how much of either one you're willing to give up. And honestly, that's a trade-off I'm willing to make. Like, for me, it's worth it to lose out on some performance so that way I can have more time playing in between charging. But like I mentioned earlier, this is actually my second unit. The first one I got ended up having a broken power button, so I couldn't turn it on after the first couple times. But you know, Valve support was super helpful and super responsive. They ended up doing an RMA immediately and just sending me a new Steam Deck. And since then, I haven't really had any like major problems. Like occasionally there's a software bug here and there, but other than that, it's been running great. And it's really changed how I look at the way I play games. Like it hasn't just expanded the library of games that I play, but also it makes me want to play them more frequently. Like there's a lot more interesting things out there and I want to play more often to try new things. I'm really looking forward to seeing where this goes in the future, like with both the software and even new revisions of the hardware. But thanks for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe down below for more videos about tech, cameras, and making. Here's a video about the Bambu Lab X1, and here's a video that YouTube thinks you're gonna like the best.